On the morning of January 16th, 2024, what seemed like an ordinary Tuesday at 10 a.m., the Santa Clara County 911 Dispatch Center suddenly received an emergency call. The caller reported that they had repeatedly tried to contact their friend but received no response. In a state of extreme worry, they urgently requested police to check on their friend's safety at the residence. Just about an hour later, at 11:10 a.m., law enforcement arrived at the provided address. It was a modern-looking two-story house with white walls and gray roof tiles. The front yard featured a garage, lush green lawn, and neatly trimmed trees, creating a tidy, well-maintained appearance. Everything outside appeared normal, with no signs of disturbance. Police approached and knocked on the door, identifying themselves, but waited without receiving any response. Not a sound came from inside. They decided to walk around and observe more carefully. All windows had their curtains drawn shut. Then, when they reached the backyard, through a slightly open window, a horrifying scene suddenly appeared before their eyes. Inside the house, the first sight that sent chills down the officers' spines was a man kneeling collapsed on the floor, both hands raised high in the air in a bizarre position. His face was lifeless, his eyes vacant and empty, staring fixedly at the space outside the window without any movement. Police called out multiple times, requesting he open the door, but everything remained shrouded in terrifying silence. Based on their professional experience, they immediately noticed unusual details. The man's black jacket and white socks were stained with bright red spots resembling blood. Unable to hesitate any longer, law enforcement broke down the front door and rushed inside. The air inside the house immediately made everyone shudder, thick, suffocating, and full of gloom. The man was immediately restrained while officers urgently searched each room. Then, in the bedroom, they discovered a woman lying motionless on the floor, showing no signs of life. The house was immediately sealed off strictly. Numerous police cars arrived, with flashing red and blue lights pulsing rapidly. Crime scene investigation began to be deployed urgently. Initial examination results showed that the female victim had multiple visible wounds to her head area, indicating she had suffered serious violence. Meanwhile, the man's right hand showed obvious swelling along with numerous deep scratches. His clothes and hands, even the floor, walls behind the bedroom door, kitchen area, and a pair of men's slippers placed in the hallway. Everything was stained with unusual bloodstains. From these traces, police quickly concluded that the man had used violence to attack the woman. When asked about the condition of his hand, he just sat motionless, his vacant eyes staring into space. After several minutes of terrifying silence, he suddenly seemed to come to his senses, his voice trembling but full of agitation as he blurted out, "I hit my wife." Police immediately inquired about the timing, and the cold answer rang out, "Yesterday." While law enforcement was still continuing their search, the man suddenly stood up abruptly. He bent down to the table, picked up a picture frame with his mouth, then suddenly swung it down hard onto the floor. The shattered photo on the ground was an image of the woman lying motionless before them, his unfortunate wife. The identities of the two individuals were quickly verified. This young couple were the owners of the house, Chen Liren, 27 years old, an engineer working on YouTube's algorithm team at Google, and his wife Xuanyi, also 27, another engineer working at Google. To clarify the incident, police sought out the person who reported the crime. She said she was a close friend of many years to the couple Liren and Xuanyi. The evening before, she and her husband came to their house for a gathering of 4 people. That very evening, she noticed Liren showing unusual behavior, distant eyes, and a quieter attitude than usual. The next morning, when she couldn't contact either spouse, an uneasy premonition made her immediately call 911 to request police check on them. Police also quickly collected statements from neighbors. One nearby resident confirmed that the night before, they heard no strange sounds and saw no suspicious people around the area. According to their account, the couple Liren had moved here in April of the previous year, bringing along a small cat. In the neighbors' eyes, the young couple always appeared affectionate, living harmoniously and very friendly. When they first moved in, they even brought cookies and a small card to neighboring houses to introduce themselves, leaving a pleasant impression. However, these seemingly perfect images now stood in complete contrast to the horrifying scene inside the house. Based on evidence collected at the scene, police identified Liren as the primary suspect. The problem was that the case had no direct witnesses, and Liren stubbornly remained silent, refusing to cooperate during interrogation sessions. Faced with this situation, investigators were forced to expand their scope and conduct a comprehensive and thorough investigation. Chen Liren stands 6 feet 3 inches tall, originally from Chengdu, Sichuan. He was born into a well-off civil servant family and raised with both intellectual and material advantages. Friends and colleagues often described him as polite, confident, and energetic, always projecting the appearance of a young man with a bright future ahead. In contrast, Xuanyi, 5 feet 6 inches tall from Baicheng, Jilin province, had a calm and introverted personality. She stood out for her exceptional intelligence from high school. In the provincial college entrance examination in Jilin province, Xuanyi was the top scorer in the natural sciences category citywide with an astounding score of 702 points. From her youth, Xuanyi had cultivated a special passion for electronic information engineering. She once shared that her life goal was to become an innovative engineer, applying cutting-edge technologies to practical life. The common ground between Liren and Xuanyi lay in their impressive academic journey. Both attended undergraduate programs at Tsinghua University, China's most prestigious institution, and both graduated with degrees in electronic information engineering. Afterward, both came to the United States to pursue master's degrees in computer science at UC San Diego, then successively joined the tech industry as talented young engineers. Interestingly, while still in Beijing, they had never known each other. It wasn't until they set foot in distant America that they found common ground, gradually becoming close friends and eventually lovers. After completing their master's programs, Chen Liren was quickly hired at Google. Xuanyi had previously interned at Amazon before also joining Google, officially realizing her dream of becoming a tech engineer. In 2022, the couple decided to marry, opening a new chapter in their lives. After the wedding, they purchased a house worth over $2 million in Santa Clara County. The young couple's life seemed perfect. Weekends regularly gathering with friends, posting travel photos, picnics, and happy everyday moments on social media. Just 2 weeks before the tragedy, they shared a bright photo with their pet cat, evidence of what seemed like a complete home. In the eyes of outsiders, Liren and Xuanyi were the model of a successful, stable, and happy young family, but precisely because of this, the sudden tragedy shocked the community even more. In the San Francisco Bay Area, home to a large Asian population, news of Xuanyi's death and Liren becoming a suspect immediately caused a sensation. Media, social networks, and public opinion simultaneously erupted in endless discussions, trying every way to explain what could have led to such a horrific tragedy befalling this seemingly perfect couple. At that time, a fairly common hypothesis was that around the time the crime occurred, Google was conducting a large-scale layoff. People believed this couple had been on the layoff list, no longer able to afford the enormous house payments, and that enormous economic pressure had led to conflicts that caused the tragedy. However, very quickly someone checked and confirmed that both their employment status still showed as active. Therefore, this hypothesis was inaccurate. As the legal proceedings progressed, the details behind the case gradually became clear. Just 2 days after the tragedy, the Santa Clara District Attorney officially charged Chen Liren with premeditated murder of his wife, Xuanyi. The first arraignment was scheduled for January 19th, but Liren continuously postponed it 4 times, citing the need for hospital treatment. Meanwhile, Liren's father immediately flew to the U.S., spending a large sum to hire a top defense attorney for his son. Xuanyi's parents in China were still waiting for visas, hoping to come to America to see their daughter one last time. 3 weeks after the incident, Liren was transferred from the hospital to the North Santa Clara Detention Center and was not allowed bail. 3 days later, he appeared before the public for the first time at the arraignment, wearing a yellow prison uniform and white protective helmet. Some experts noted that the yellow uniform indicated he was transferred from the jail's psychiatric hospital ward to attend court, though this didn't necessarily mean there was an official psychiatric diagnosis. It was likely just the lawyer's strategy to prepare for a competency evaluation request. That day's court session was brief. The lawyer confirmed receiving the charges but did not enter a plea, meaning Liren neither admitted nor denied the accusations. The judge allowed him more time and scheduled April 19th for submitting his plea. As scheduled on April 19th, Liren remained silent. His lawyer requested postponement, citing the lack of Xuanyi's autopsy report. 2 months later, at the second hearing, Liren appeared in a red prison uniform, the color reserved for dangerous inmates or those in solitary confinement. The court session lasted only 3 minutes, with the lawyer again requesting postponement due to being busy with multiple cases. 4 months later, the third hearing took place. This time, the defense cited receiving medical records from China related to Liren's mental health and needing more time to translate and study them. The prosecution expressed clear frustration with the continuous delays, but ultimately the judge still agreed, scheduling the next session for January 2025. By January 2025, Santa Clara County Court held the fourth hearing on the guilty plea. Liren appeared in a red prison uniform, beige pants, and black shoes, looking heavier than before and maintaining a calm demeanor. The court session was expected to announce a guilty plea, but the judge didn't ask directly, implicitly meaning Liren was pleading not guilty. The defense lawyer then confirmed the case would enter the preliminary hearing phase. This phase, also called preliminary examination, occurs after arraignment and before the formal trial, typically applied to felony cases. The purpose is to determine whether there's sufficient evidence to bring the case to trial. The prosecution presents evidence, the defense has the right to cross-examine witnesses, and the judge decides whether to proceed. During this time, the defendant can still change their stance, pleading guilty or not guilty. On June 23, 2025, the case began the preliminary hearing phase lasting 3 days at Santa Clara County Court. Besides police officers and the reporting party testifying, the appearance of surveillance video footage from inside the house where the crime occurred, along with a key witness, completely changed everyone's initial assumptions. Let's turn back time to the evening before the tragedy occurred. That day was also when the close friend of the couple, Liren, Wang Zixuan, returned from an overseas trip. It was Zixuan who later called to report the crime. She was originally a Tsinghua University alumna who had known Liren since 2018. After graduation, Zixuan moved to the San Francisco Bay Area, then married and settled there since 2019. That afternoon, Zixuan and her husband invited the Liren couple and several other friends to dinner for a reunion. However, only Liren and Xuanyi were absent. Xuanyi texted that her husband was having work troubles and was emotionally unstable, so they wouldn't attend. At the time, Zixuan didn't think much of it, but right after dinner, she suddenly received a text from Liren's mother in China. The worried mother said she hadn't been able to contact her son for many days, his phone wasn't answering, and asked Zixuan to stop by and check the situation. Around 6:30 p.m., Zixuan and her husband went to the young couple's house. Upon entering, they immediately sensed a heavy, gloomy atmosphere pervading everywhere. Zixuan and her husband tried to make conversation, hoping to help Liren relieve some pressure. But contrary to expectations, he remained silent almost the entire evening, only responding with brief 1- or 2-word answers. Only Xuanyi was beside him, gently explaining on her husband's behalf. She said that recently Liren had been extremely stressed, work was continuously problematic, and his supervisor was overly strict in management. This pressure caused him to begin showing abnormal symptoms, auditory hallucinations, muscle tension, and uncontrollable hand tremors. Zixuan and her husband were stunned hearing this. They hadn't expected their friend to be in such a dangerous condition. They immediately advised all 4 of them to have a simple meal, rest early, and go to the hospital together for examination the next morning. So they ordered takeout. After a while, the 2 men went outside to get the food, leaving only Xuanyi and Zixuan in the house. At that moment, Xuanyi suddenly posed a loaded question. If someone in the company reports a colleague, would it definitely succeed? Zixuan was momentarily stunned, not understanding why Xuanyi would ask such a question. Seeing her friend didn't grasp the situation, Xuanyi began to confide, revealing a truth that would surprise anyone who heard it. She said that Liren's ex-girlfriend, a woman named Tang, had recently flown to the San Francisco Bay Area to meet him. Before leaving, Ms. Tang even asked if Liren wanted to see her off at the airport. Initially, he seemed angry, but eventually went anyway. And at the moment of parting, Liren even leaned down and kissed his ex-girlfriend's cheek. Ms. Tang was currently working for an internet company in Seattle. Ironically, this company and Google, where both Liren and Xuanyi worked, both belonged to the parent corporation Alphabet. This made the connection between them even harder to sever. In fact, even before marriage, the lingering relationship between Liren and his ex-girlfriend had repeatedly caused Xuanyi pain. She had discovered her husband secretly maintaining contact. Each time caught, Liren would hurriedly apologize, delete Tang's contact information, and swear to end it. But before long, they would resume contact again. Not only that, in daily life, Liren frequently compared his wife to others. He repeatedly told Xuanyi bluntly that she wasn't as good as his ex-girlfriend and couldn't compare to friends' wives in terms of appearance, interests, and income. Sometimes, Liren would cruelly say, "If it weren't for you, my life would be better." Right before the wedding, Liren even confided to friends that he was still hesitant, unsure whether he should marry Xuanyi. Later, after becoming husband and wife, Xuanyi often complained to her close friend Zixuan that her husband continued to be entangled and indecisive about the past. That evening, after all four had eaten takeout together, Zixuan and her husband prepared to leave. In a private moment, Xuanyi quietly told Zixuan that she had discovered a Google Drive document in her husband's phone, written by his ex-girlfriend. This document recorded the entire process of their acquaintance and dating, and what hurt Xuanyi most was that it also mentioned how Liren had once considered buying a house in the San Francisco Bay Area because of his ex-girlfriend. Xuanyi firmly told her friend that she had made up her mind to leave her husband. The next morning, on the exact day the crime occurred, Zixuan and her husband went to Liren's house as planned to go to the hospital together for examination. But they called repeatedly without being able to reach them. In their worry, they decided to call 911, and from there the tragedy was exposed. At the court hearing, a Santa Clara County police officer testified. He described the house layout in detail. The first floor had a front door leading straight into the dining room, with the living room on one side and kitchen, bathroom, and 2 bedrooms on the other. The second floor had 2 additional bedrooms and a bathroom. He said when they arrived at the scene, Liren was kneeling in the hallway between the kitchen and first-floor bedroom. Xuanyi was lying motionless on the bedroom floor near the front door. Additionally, on the second floor, police discovered an opened suitcase with neatly folded clothes, as if someone was preparing to leave. This officer also confirmed that during witness interviews, Zixuan had told them about the complicated relationship between Liren and his ex-girlfriend, a detail that had repeatedly troubled Xuanyi. This completely matched Zixuan's direct testimony in court. Another police officer provided 2 surveillance videos to the court, reconstructing the final journey of the couple Liren. First was footage from the doorbell camera. At 4:28 p.m., one day before the crime occurred, no one was outside the front door, but the microphone clearly recorded fierce arguing coming from inside. In the audio recording, Xuanyi loudly questioned, "Why did you go?" Right after, a kitten startled and ran out the door. The footage showed Liren wearing a down jacket, rushing out to catch the cat, and then using his hand to push Xuanyi, who was about to step outside, back into the house. At 4:52, Liren left the house. He didn't return until 6:19, and just minutes later, at 6:30 p.m., Zixuan and her husband appeared, ringing the doorbell to enter. The second video came from the kitchen surveillance camera, a device the young couple had installed only to monitor their cat. This camera operated based on motion sensors and only recorded when objects moved. According to extracted data, at 12:21 a.m. on the morning of the tragedy, Xuanyi entered the kitchen. This was also the last time her image was recorded while alive. At 1:04 a.m., the kitchen lights suddenly went out. Autopsy results showed this was precisely when Xuanyi was fatally attacked. Starting from 4:43 a.m., the kitchen camera continued recording unusual images of Liren. The first time, he appeared with blood-stained clothing, silently entering the kitchen. At 5:16, he appeared again, his right hand noticeably swollen. Just 4 minutes later, Liren carried some electrical device, acting incomprehensibly. At 8:10 a.m., he returned again, this time holding a kitchen knife, continuing his mysterious behavior. The prosecution asserted these surveillance videos were crucial evidence showing Liren had directly harmed his wife. Not stopping there, they also presented another detail. On the wall in the entrance hall, Liren had written 2 chilling lines: "I have no other choice," and "I bear the consequences." From the evidence, police had somewhat reconstructed Liren's actions before and after the crime. Regarding motive, witness testimony showed the complicated romantic relationship between Liren, Xuanyi, and the ex-girlfriend was a key clue. Notably, on the very first day of the hearing, Liren's ex-girlfriend participated online but remained silent. Only on the 3rd day of the preliminary hearing did she appear as a witness, revealing many more shocking details. Liren's ex-girlfriend, Ms. Tang, also came from Chengdu, Sichuan. She and Liren had known each other since age 5, growing up in the same residential area, with their families having close relationships. In 2013, while in high school, they officially confirmed their romantic relationship. After graduation, both were accepted to Tsinghua University, China's most prestigious institution. However, near graduation in 2018, Ms. Tang gradually realized their personalities were no longer compatible. She yearned to pursue a freer life, while they were about to attend different schools for their master's degrees. Taking this as an opportunity, she suggested breaking up. But the breakup wasn't clean. Ms. Tang admitted it took her a very long time to truly escape from this relationship. There was always unclear entanglement between them, sometimes together, sometimes apart. Only when each person truly moved to different cities did they publicly confirm on social media that their youthful romance had officially ended. During the period from 2020 to 2021, despite establishing a romantic relationship with Xuanyi, Liren still secretly maintained contact with his ex-girlfriend. He sent Ms. Tang nostalgic messages, saying he missed their past times and even suggesting reconciliation. He also asked if she would consider moving to the Bay Area, and if she agreed, they could buy a house together. But by then, Ms. Tang had started a new life in Seattle and had a new boyfriend. She firmly refused all of Liren's suggestions. In July 2023, Ms. Tang officially got engaged to her boyfriend. During this time, she wrote a document stored on Google Drive, recording all the ups and downs of her past relationship with Liren, like a personal diary. Tang said the purpose was only to release emotions, like pressing a delete button to close the past, with no intention of sharing it with anyone. However, things quickly went beyond expectations. Just 2 months later, Tang's fiancé was arrested for soliciting prostitution. Furious and ashamed, she immediately called off the engagement. This shock devastated Tang, but feeling humiliated, she didn't dare tell family or friends. In desperation, she just wanted to find an old acquaintance who could listen. And the first person she thought of was Liren. In October 2023, just 3 months before the crime occurred, Ms. Tang proactively contacted Liren to share her sadness after canceling the engagement, while admitting she had returned to single life. Liren also didn't hide anything, saying his current marriage brought him no happiness, even asserting that getting married was due to his wife's pressure rather than his voluntary choice. During the preliminary hearing, Tang testified that her mental state was unstable then. She was too devastated, so she sent the Google Drive document to Liren, but couldn't clearly remember what she had written. To help her forget her sadness, friends invited Tang to the Bay Area to attend a performance. In mid-November, she was there and met Liren twice, first at Google's cafeteria, second at the airport where Liren came to see her off. Tang explained that asking if Liren wanted to come to the airport was only meant to treat it as a final meeting to close the past properly. At the airport, she told him, "I hope no matter what happens, you must live happily." but she wasn't sure if Lyran understood her meaning correctly or had interpreted it completely differently. When airport staff urged her to leave, Lyran kissed her cheek. This somewhat surprised and made her uncomfortable. After returning to Seattle, Ms. Tang texted Lyran, definitively saying she didn't want to continue contact anymore. Lyran replied that his wife had installed tracking devices on his phone and already knew about his going to the airport to see her off. Right after, Lyran immediately blocked Tang's number. What Ms. Tang didn't know was that the day they met at the airport coincided very closely with the first anniversary of Lyran and Xuanyi's wedding. On a day that should have been dedicated to his wife, Lyran wore the very shirt given by his ex-girlfriend to see her off. This action ignited fierce anger in Xuanyi's heart. Early morning one day before the tragedy occurred, Xuanyi accidentally discovered the Google Drive document written by Tang in her husband's phone. Those detailed lines, recording every romantic memory between her husband and his ex, cut deep into her self-respect like knife wounds. Unable to contain her fury, Xuanyi left harsh comments right in that document, expressing reproach toward Tang and stating that her husband should have no further contact with Ms. Tang. That afternoon, as the document owner, Ms. Tang saw the angry comments Xuanyi had left. She immediately responded, "I understand you very well. When I was with Lyran, I also used to compare myself with his ex-girlfriend and always felt inferior. If I were you, I would advise you to reconsider this marriage." This Google Drive document became the final straw, pushing Xuanyi to her limit of endurance. One day before the tragedy, she had confided to her close friend Zi Xuan that she had decided to leave her husband. Notably, before the court hearing, police had found the aforementioned document and questioned Ms. Tang. During the interrogation session, she cried and said, "I deeply regret it. When he gave me the chance to get back together, I should have agreed." At the preliminary hearing, the prosecution played this recording and questioned, did those words mean she had once expressed intention to reconcile with Lyran? Tang immediately denied it, asserting the statement only reflected momentary despair, that after the shock of being betrayed by her fiancé, returning to an ex would be better than enduring that humiliation. Ms. Tang had sent an email to police writing, "Lyran is someone who cares a lot about consequences. He wanted to divorce and get back together with me, but he didn't dare. He might go bankrupt, and I wouldn't agree with him either. He wouldn't do anything without a backup plan. I've never seen him do anything irrational. The way he expresses anger is through silence." Here, the 3-day preliminary hearing concluded. The judge ruled that the prosecution had provided sufficient evidence to prove Lyran was suspected of murder, supporting the murder charges against him. The case would proceed to the next litigation phase. On July 7th, Santa Clara County Court held a hearing on subpoenas. Lyran's lawyer declared denial of all charges while waiving the right to speedy trial within 60 days, a move showing they would plead not guilty and wanted to extend time for preparation or negotiation. The initial hearing was scheduled to discuss Lyran's medical records, but due to lack of court clerk, both sides agreed to postpone 1 week. A week later, at the second hearing, the defense submitted records from 3 hospitals, including Stanford, but hadn't received ones from Kaiser. The judge scheduled continuation for August 4th and decided this session wouldn't be public due to medical privacy concerns. The prosecution simultaneously requested witness Tang submit the Google Drive document. Tang's lawyer had submitted it and requested special protective order as she had been attacked with hate speech on social media. The prosecution expressed sympathy, but argued the document had evidentiary value and was shared by Tang herself, lacking basis for absolute sealing. Finally, the judge issued general protective order. The document could only be used internally by prosecution and defense, not publicly disclosed. The prosecution also noted they might later request additional medical records regarding Lyran's mental health. Defense lawyers said they already had some medical documents from China and would share when needed during trial phase. By now, 1.5 years had passed since the crime occurred. The case had gone through 6 arraignments, 4 plea hearings, 3 preliminary hearings, and 2 subpoena hearings. However, the case still hadn't officially entered the trial phase. The defense's continuous requests to postpone pre-trial procedures had left victim Xuanyi's family still waiting wearily for justice. The prosecution had once assessed that this case's progress completely depended on the defendant, and this process could drag on for a very long time. While the judicial process continued to be pushed forward, the house that once witnessed happy moments and tragedy of the couple had quietly changed owners. According to information, the next public hearing was scheduled for October 2025. Then the official trial schedule and estimated trial days would be arranged. A year and a half has passed since this heartbreaking tragedy occurred. Yet the journey seeking justice for Xuanyi remains very difficult with continuously postponed court sessions. This is not just a murder case, but also a complex story about life pressure, contradictions in love, and one person's mental health. And that concludes today's case. Thank you for following along and see you in upcoming videos.